bagus. Tadi sempat putus.
Oh iya. Sudah masuk semua, Pak Satria? Sudah masuk semua, Pak Satria?
Sudah Bu Ati.
Baik. Bapak Ibu, apakah bisa kita mulai?
Bisa, Bu.
Bisa, Bu. Waalaikumsalam, Bu Ati.
Assalamualaikum, Bu Ati.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sehat untuk semua. Baik, baik, Pak Edu, bisa segera dimulai, monggo.
Okay. Thank you, Bati, to the ICSADU series 2020. So there will be several series for this year's ICSADU. Today is the first series of the ICSADU, and next week and next third week there will be the second and the third. So this event is held by the Department of Architecture, Faculty of Engineering, Diponegoro University. So thank God that we could meet in this virtual space. So I think during this pandemic condition, we more and more getting used to this kind of space thing. And thank you for all of the attendants to join this event. I believe that we will learn many great things from the speakers today, especially thanks to Professor Kikata and then Professor Mantas, Professor Nurul, and Dr. Ati and their speech, and who already provide their time and knowledge for all of us today. Before we begin this event, I would like to invite all of the attendants to take a break for a moment, so that hopefully this event could run. Please take your time for break for a moment. Amen. Okay, thank you. So to begin today's event, I would like to invite the Dean of Faculty of Engineering, right now represented by the Vice Dean first, Professor Siswo, to give a welcoming speech to all of us and then to open this event. So I would like to invite for Professor Siswo to have the speech. Please, Pak Siswa, monggo.
Thanks, Pak Edu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, distinguished all invited speaker, moderator, and all participants. Dear colleagues, welcome to the 4th International Conference on Architecture, Design, and Urbanism 2020, webinar series discussion by Department of Architecture, Faculty of Engineering, Diponegoro University, in collaboration with several partner universities, had the theme of local wisdom and heritage towards sustainability and survivability in architecture and urbanism. In this webinar, I recognize and thanks to some familiar invited speaker. Welcome, Professor Dr. Eng Juni Kikata. Welcome to this webinar, Prof, from Kagoshima University, Japan. Welcome, Professor Almantas Samalavicius from Vilnius, Gediminas Technology University, Lithuania. Welcome, Prof, in this webinar. And also Dr. Nurul Syala Abdul Latif from University Sains Islam Malaysia. Selamat siang, Bu Nurul. Semoga selalu sehat. And also Dr. Atik Suprapti from Diponegoro University, Semarang, Indonesia. And the last one, Dr. Budi Sudarwanto from Diponegoro University, Semarang, Indonesia. We all understand that importance of science, technology, and innovation in our day-to-day lives and the ways in which they are transforming the world. Science, technology, and innovation are indispensable for our response to and recovery from the crisis at the moment. Equally important is our collaboration in this great effort. Equally important are deployment of scientific invention, innovation, and technological solution on a scale that will reach their target audience. I believe that by participating in this webinar, we are in the right place and the right time. Together, let us accelerate the exchange of ideas and scaling up of good practices in human sustainability and survivability. I am especially pleased that the discussion and activities here will inform some material relating local wisdom and heritage from many countries and also best practices. I am confident that you will find new ideas, fresh energy, and novel partnership to sustain your effort in support of the local wisdom and heritage towards sustainability and survivability through science, technology, and innovation. I wish you all a very successful webinar. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Prof. Siswa. So the next we will begin the presentation and discussion session. So I would like to invite Mr. Reza as the moderator of this session. So please, Reza.
Yes, Pak Edo.
The time and place right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Edo. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon to you all. His Excellency of the Faculty of Engineering, Universitas Diponegoro, which is represented by Vice Dean, and respectable Chair of Architecture Department of Dr. Agung Budi Sarjono, MT, and the honorable mention of lecturers and all participants in this webinar. Please introduce myself. I'm Reza Rizkianto as the moderator of today's webinar. I'm very pleased to see you here all and to welcome you in this Friday routine webinar. As Pak Edo has explained that this webinar is conducted by the Department of Architecture, Faculty Engineering, Universitas Diponegoro in collaboration with several partner universities, organized an online collaboration towards sustainability and survivability in architecture and urbanism. We just carrying the theme wing, just wisdom and heritage, inclusive design and green building, will be held from 11 September until 30 October of 2020. And this program includes several agendas. namely ICSADU webinar, lecture and session, manuscript coaching, and discussion for potential collaboration. So ladies and gentlemen, we had 5 speakers today, which will present in 2 sessions. In our first session, there will be 3 of them. The first one is Dr. Nurul Shala Abdul Latif, MBA from Universitas Islamic Malaysia, USIM. And the second one is Dr. Ati Suprapti from Universitas Diponegoro. And the third one is from Kagoshima University, Japan, which is Professor Dr. Engineering Jun Kikata. Sorry. So allow me to give short introduction of them. Dr. Nurul Sara Abdul Latif is one lecturer in USIM. She graduated from Baccalaureate University from Malaysia in 1999 and received her Master of Built Environment from University of New South Wales in 2002. And the PhD in Built Environment from University of Nottingham on 2011. Now she is currently senior lecturer at the Department of Architecture, Universitas Islamic Malaysia, and the research that she has been involved around the issues of sustainable development related to urban design and heritage. Her area of interest has also developed in the importance of sunnah in achieving sustainable development of cities. She is also involved with various urban consultancy works. And the second one is Dr. Ati Suprapti. He's lecturer from Diponegoro University. She graduated from Universitas Diponegoro and received her master degree and her doctoral degree from the same university, which is from Universitas Diponegoro. Now she is currently served as head of the doctoral program in architecture department. Many of research that has been involved is around the issues of sustainable development related to the urban settlement. And the third one is Professor Dr. Engineering Jun Kikata from Kagoshima University. He is one of researchers in Kagoshima University, field in engineering, science and engineering area, graduated School of Science and Engineering, Department of Engineering Architecture and Architecture Engineering from 2020. His field expertise on architectural history and planning history, and also urban planning. So before the presentation begins, I would like to know you all about the regulation, how the presentation will be going on. Firstly, I would like to give time for every speaker to present the material for about 20 minutes, and then we will have question and answer session for 20 next minutes. So for those who want to ask question, you can do it by chat message during the presentations. Then I will summarize some of them in the end of session. So now, allow me to welcome the first speakers, Dr. Nurul Shala Abdul Latif, to deliver your presentations. Please welcome Dr. Nurul Shala.
Thank you very much, Mr. Risa, as the MC for today. I'm very honored to be here today to share with you a very important topic. Can I share the screen?
Yes, please.
Can you see the screen?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, we can see your share screen.
All right. Okay. So I will be sharing with you all a very important topic, which is the derivation of urban design principles from the Malay Islamic town of Kuala Terengganu, Malaysia. Yeah. So let me share with you the overview of the presentation. So I'll be covering 5 parts, which is the first one is the Islamic city in general, then the Malay Islamic town of Kuala Terengganu itself. I'll be also sharing the evaluation of the urban design principles, the findings, and also finally the conclusion. So let me start with the issue. The issue is very common, but it's a very important issue which many new cities built are lacking in the sense of place and also its identity. So you can see the picture on the left is a common new current township that is happening in Malaysia, which it doesn't have any strong identity in the sense of place. So this is an opportunity that we have done to look at back the local wisdom in the early Malay settlement, where after the arrival of Islam, but before the colonization of the British. to derive the urban design principles from the Malay Islamic town of Kuala Terengganu for reference of the future cities. Yeah. So this is what we're going to do for this. So let me start with just introducing Islam. Actually, the meaning of Islam is peace. Yeah. So it can be concluded as Islam is actually a way of life guided by the Al-Quran and Al-Sunnah, focused towards the submission of God, Allah, in the development of humankind. I would like to quote one surah or a chapter, ayah from a chapter. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Say, O Muhammad, I have only been commanded to worship the Lord of this city, who made it sacred and to whom belongs all things. And I am commanded to be of the Muslim, those who submit to Allah, recite the Quran, and whoever is guided is only guided for the benefit of himself, and whoever strays, say, I am only one of the warners. So in the Quran, Allah mentioned in the Quran 14 times about the cities, the features and also the population of cities. Based on the theory of Basim Hakim in 1986, he actually concluded on two types of Arab Islamic cities. Yeah, there were two types. Number one is where cities that are built with the Sharia law. That means it starts from zero and it starts with the Sharia law according to the Quran and Sunnah. Another one is where cities which is assimilated into Sharia, meaning the Islam comes later. After the cities is already developed. So it molded into the existing physical structure. Islamic culture peacefully developed, assimilated, and embraced the regional cultural characteristics which did not contradict with the Sharia. So this is, let me just explain this in a diagram. So you can see these two. The first one is where it starts with Sharia law as the building guidelines. And another one is where it goes into a new city, but using the Sharia law as the design language. So these two becomes the method of control and communication to come up with the final physical development. So when you get into the how it's going to be executed, so it is the macro part of the urban is being decided by the rulers, but the micro part of the urban is decided by the citizens. And you can see both will be considering the site and environmental condition constantly before the final urban physical system is being developed. It will be comprises a resulting physical form of the city or the town, which is relatively dynamic. Yeah? So based on Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik, the founder of the predominant school of law, the nucleus of a Medina city should be interconnection of these three aspects. Number one is the governance, which is the Sultan or the Qadi. Number two is the masjid, or known as mosque. And number three is the market and its surrounding, which is the residential area. So the interrelationship between these three components make up a very strong Islamic city. Yeah? So from there, as the basis, we evaluate the urban design principles. We cross-analyze four aspects. Number one is the integrative urban design theory, which involves functional and physical dimension. Number two is the sustainable urban design principles. Number three is the character of Arab Islamic cities. And finally, the character of Kuala Terengganu itself. Yeah? So let me just share with you why we have chosen Kuala Terengganu. Kuala Terengganu actually sits located on the east side of Peninsular Malaysia. So if you can see, Peninsular Malaysia is on the east side, and it is at the estuary of the Terengganu River. So this is where it is. Yeah, on the left, you can see the map. This is where it is. So it is well connected and is open to the South China Sea. So you can see that it has become a port since 1200 based on the writings by Follow An. And traders known coming from China, Patani, have been trading here. Some of the traders actually stayed and become residents. And this is when the cross-culture happens throughout the years, where skills were exchanged and acquired by various parties. So as Islam has become the way of life in Terengganu for over more than 400 years, the characteristic of the settlement and architecture of the house was found to be resembling the urban design principles of Islamic city, but responding to the local context. So the Terengganu city actually established through time, merging several settlements or villages known as kampung. This is in line with the definition of Ibn Khaldun, who defines city as village area that is prospered by the residents, respecting the geography of the place, the early settlements, while they arrange themselves according to the shape of the estuary itself. So zooming into the town itself, you can see this is the whole town in the 1800s. But you can see it comprises of several elements, main elements. Number one is the small villages. It comprises of the small villages combining together to make up the whole town. So there's a few more over this side, we can see here. And then you can see that, on this, this is all, the one that in yellow is the Malay settlement. The one in purple is actually the Chinese settlement, where the traders come in and reside. So you can see it is clustered in one area. Yeah? It doesn't mix with the other Malay residential area. So then you can see the next one is, this is the palace. Yeah? This is where the palace is. On the lower part, the blue color is actually the older palace, but the one in the middle up here is the newer palace. So that palace actually sits in between the residential areas. Yeah? So then you can see the next one is the residents that is next to the palace are actually the kinship of the palace, yeah? The kins of the palace. And those who are actually next to the, very close by to the palace are the workers or people working for the palace. And you can see this is where the port is. And the point that I put here is, this is the market, yeah? This is the biggest market for Kuala Terengganu. This is another market. And this is the main mosque of Kuala Terengganu. So if you remember the nucleus that I said just now, it comprises of these three main nucleus, which is the market, the palace, and also the masjid. So these three components in one nucleus is very, very important. And this nucleus, surprisingly or interestingly, is being duplicated in these smaller villages. So each of these small villages has the same component, but in a smaller version. Instead of a big masjid, it has a smaller surau or a musalla. And it has the leader of the village and also shops in between the house. Yeah? So you have this, the smaller nucleus being duplicated throughout the town, and it can go very far. As long as this nucleus is duplicated, you can see the essence of Islam is still around. Okay, so then you can see what happened, that the big main nucleus is the biggest masjid, the biggest market, and also the biggest, the palace itself. But then it is being connected by the smaller nucleus, yeah? The three main nucleus, but smaller version. So that's why Terengganu is very, very significant in its, the Malay Islamic town. And then the other main significant reason why we have chosen Kuala Terengganu as the study is because this is where the inscription stone of Kuala Terengganu was founded. The inscription stone was dated 702 Hijrah or 1303 Masihi. And in it, there is explanation about the Islamic law. So since the inscription stone was found, until the establishment of the town, it has that 400 years of development. So then you have this 20,000 population of Kuala Terengganu, more than other town in the Malay state during that time. And it is also economically stronger with local and international trading. And it is sustainably producing local products like batik, brass, keris for trading. And among all the states in Malaysia, this is the last state to accept the British advisor. So you can understand the law, the Islamic law has been going on in Terengganu for a long time. So in the inscription stone itself, I would like to highlight here is where it bears an established language, number one, writing, systemized social structure, Islamic law, economics, astronomical knowledge, mathematics, and others, and showed that Malay Muslim has actually established a civilization more for a city. Yeah. Okay, so what is our findings? So we can actually conclude it. So the structure of my page is where on the left side, on top of the left side is where I put the integrative theory of urban design. And this is where the comparison between the Arab Islamic city and also the Kuala Terengganu. And the green colored writing on the side is actually the urban design principles that we have found in Kuala Terengganu. Yeah? So the first one is actually just a moment. Blue-green neighborhood, yeah, which is the city are oriented towards water and green space. So this is one of the urban design principles that's available in Terengganu. So in Arab city is actually developed based on the Islamic jurisprudence law, and the components respond to the natural law, building principles, and also respect the culture of the place, which is according to the guidance of the Quran. So in Terengganu, it's the same, where the buildings or the development is responding to the river as the source of water and the street and main transportation mode. And you can see this is Terengganu in the 1800s. You can see that the city or the town itself is being developed, integrated with greens around the city. Though this picture is black and white, but you can actually see the trees, yeah? So the components are the palace, the government buildings, the houses, and also all the trees around the city. And then you can see the next one, the urban design principle is compactness. Reduce the distance between living and work. So during that time, in Kuala Terengganu, the working and living place is very close by, similar to the Arab Islamic city, where the work and trading area is just a walking distance. So you can see these people doing batik next to a house. You know, so just it's like next to a house or just next to underneath their house. They do the brass next to their house, so it's very close by, the working and living. So it's actually in the residential area, the commercial, the trading, and for those who are not working on batik, they work at the paddy field. They work at the fish as a fisherman. So walking towards the jetty also is still a walking distance. Walking towards the paddy field also is a walking distance. So it's actually a very compact city or town. Yeah? Then the next one is sustainable design, which buildings uses green technology. So in Kuala Terengganu, the building are actually using green technology from the beginning, where we have rainwater harvesting, from where we uses again all the rain that comes down from the roofs. And the building design is also responsive to the climate, which, and also with using the local resources. And this is also available in the Arab Islamic city. Yeah. Okay. The next one is efficiency. We're using energy and resource efficient. So if you can look, and this is from the inside of a house. So the way that the design or building is being built is having a very high window, allowing the lighting, natural daylight to come in. And you can see that the opening, there's a lot of opening, and you can have this cross ventilation inside the building. Rarely people will be switching on the fan because the inside of the house is already very cooling. So this we can see in Arab Islamic cities. They use this ventilation through the courtyards. Yeah? The components is almost the same, the houses, the government building, and also you can see it on the streets as well. The next point on urban design principles that's available is privacy, which protect the privacy of individual units. If you can see in Kuala Terengganu, it emphasizes privacy through the way the building is being located. If you look at all this, the arrow actually shows the position of the entrance. None of the entrances actually faces each other. So this is how they maintain or control the quality of privacy between the houses. So this is also available, or the same values is also available in the Islamic city, where you can't really see or know what's inside the building from the street. Yeah? The next urban design principles is the neighborhood character. So the neighborhood has a very unique character and has its own values. So you can see this, the neighborhood around here, the houses is almost the same form and pattern for housing. This is very important to create humbleness in each of the people. But however, you can actually still have your own space size. The difference is on the size of the space inside the building, the type of the material, and also the sophistication of decoration. So say for example, carvings apply, distinguish one building to another. So you don't actually know who is rich unless you go inside the building. Yeah. And then the next one is human scale. So the cities are built at a human scale. So you can see the streets and heights of the buildings along the pedestrian area is actually a pedestrian scale streets. So this is in between buildings, yeah, in between the houses in the villages. So you feel comfortable with the right enclosure. So this is also available in both cities, yeah, in Arab Islamic cities and Kuala Terengganu town. The next one is transition in design. So the city or the town itself is changing slowly and does not transform overnight. So this is a very important point. Yeah, sometimes we build master plan, we build so much, and at the end of the day, a lot of the buildings are being abandoned. Yeah. Then the next one is linkages or ease of movement. So cities are transverse and walking and transportation accessible and efficient. So accessible between the three main components just now, trying to get to all the basic necessities, is highly permeable between buildings. So you can see the radius of the area to get into the basic necessities is just 400-meter walking radius. So this is duplicated throughout. If it's further than 400, you have that nucleus again. So you won't be missing the basic facilities. So ease of movement in between the cities also, you can actually walk to all these areas. So that is in Kuala Terengganu and is also available in the Arab Islamic city. Yeah. Then the building is being, or the development is being considered the people's first, where the buildings are built for people, not for cars. You can see, people cycling in between the buildings, but this cannot be entered by cars. Some of the houses are very close by because they are very close kinship, yeah, and it actually separated between public and private domain clearly, yeah. And on the physical dimension, finally, is the public space. So this is the mergers of all the streets, and you have this public space. So this public space that I showed in the picture is actually in front of the palace. So in front of the palace is where people would gather and have events together with the rest of the community. Yeah. So this is what we call here as padang, or in front of the houses we call laman. Yeah. Then we go into the functional dimension. It is actually a complete neighborhood, yeah, because all the basic needs are within the walking distance. So this creates a low carbon footprint for all. So this is what the future cities needs. And then same goes to Terengganu. It has this basic complete neighborhood criteria. The next one is the aspect of health and safety. Water, air quality, safety, defense are fundamental goals. Interestingly, a lot of the streets inside the Arab Islamic city is very legible to the locals. But if we, from outsiders, come for the first time, you will not be able to understand the whole structure of the city very well because it's very organic. It is the same in Kuala Terengganu. The streets are all very organic, but interestingly, you have the component what we call as eyes on the street. So if you look at this, the picture, oops. The houses has walls which has carvings, and that allows people from the inside to see the safety of people along the street. So you have this connection between inside and outside throughout the kampung, throughout the villages. And another aspect which is very important is water for all. Yeah. In the Arab Islamic city, you can see a lot of sabil, or what we call as the fountain for the community. So we believe that water is actually God gift. So it is should be available to everyone. So it's the same in Kuala Terengganu, where we have wells for the community being located a lot of in the public spaces, and also you have the well for individual buildings. So this is very, very important aspect as well. And then under the quality of life principles is where it links to the happiness which attracts greater community. In the Arab Islamic city, you have the lifelong learning, and also where the components of masjid and madrasah actually gives this a lifelong learning. In Kuala Terengganu, you have this also because the masjid and madrasah is also doing the same thing. But at the same time, we have what we call as gotong royong. Gotong royong is actually where the people get together to have an events and helping each other. So this culture has been going on to have this quality of life between each other. And this is what is now is missing in the new modern world, yeah? Where we only give catering and so on. And then we have the conviviality as the urban design principles, where neighborhood are social and lively with personal space, companion, family, and community. So you can see in Arab Islamic city, the cluster is actually according to the kinship, but they have a common area where they can meet to have for a common area that they can meet and do tradings. So this is the same with Kuala Terengganu, where you can see that each of these villages is according to the kinship, and you can see the Chinese has its own vicinity, but they have this pasar, or they have the market to become the common area for them to meet and for them to do trading. So this is where it allows the each of these culture or the people to practice and do their own things without interfering with other people's culture. So that allows them to be comfortable, yeah, and happy. Okay, and finally, under the functional dimension, you can see heritage conservation. During 1800 and 1700, before the British colonization, you can see the buildings are being built the same, similar pattern, similar design, but of course with this different design inside the house, yeah, personalization by buildings. So, but this is where the preservation of architecture and culture, you can see in Arab Islamic cities also, they have these similar patterns in the traditional Arab Islamic city. So you can see how the component of traditional architecture and traditional culture is being preserved. Yeah? And finally, as a conclusion, you can see that it is so important for us to really do a case study and research on this model that has already been built traditionally. Yeah. So what we are trying to do in the future, we're trying to do now, is already has been done before this. Embedded all the sustainable urban design principles that are important for future cities. Through this study, we found 15 urban design principles which are relevant in the context of Malaysia. The finding signifies the importance of revisiting our local heritage and how it can be as a reference, and how the future cities can retain a sense of place and be developed sustainably. Okay, with that, I thank you for your attention. So I'd love to give back to the to Mr. MC to continue for the question and answer.
Thank you, Ms. Nurul, Dr. Nurul. Thank you very much for your giving such informative and interesting presentations here. Before we go to the next presentation, I would like to have some conclusions in these sessions. That you said that the urban principles here is influenced by the Islamic values which are embedded in and characterized in Kuala Terengganu, right? So and then you revealed that Kuala Terengganu has similar characteristics to other Islamic cities. However, it is translated in the local context. Yeah. There are comparison revealed 15 urban design principles related to Malay Islamic town of Kuala Terengganu. So maybe we will go to the next presentations. Will be presented by Dr. Ati Suprapti, which is planned to present a sustainability of Muslim settlement in Java, a phenomenon of a living heritage. Maybe Bu Ati could prepare yourself.
Thank you, Mr. MC, Mr. Reza.
Okay, I will give your please, I will give you an opportunity to present your presentations.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ati Suprapti. I'm from Diponegoro University. And in this nice occasion, I would like to present my paper entitled Sustainability and Survivability of Muslim City in Java, a Phenomenon of Living Heritage. As I would like to ask permission to share screen. Okay. Can you see my share?
Yes, Wati.
Yes? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let me first to share about the outline of my presentation. Firstly, is we will discuss about the definition, and then Muslim city in Java, about configuration of city, social cohesion, and conservation of cultural heritage, supporting economic, then sustainability of Muslim city in Java, the role of living heritage in sustainability city in Java, and conclusion. Sustainability focus on the meeting the needs of the present without compromising of ability of future generation to meet their needs. It composed of three pillars: economic, environmental, and social, also known informally of profit, planets, and people. Meanwhile, survivability means to survive in a certain situation. Survivability defines ability to survive in a short time. A little bit different with sustainability. And what about living heritage? Living heritage means the natural perform activities designing, building, carrying, and nurturing as well living together. Okay. And what about the Muslim city in Java? Muslim city in Java, just like Dr. Nurul has presented before, Muslim city in Java relate to the long history. It's known since 11th century up to the present. It relates to politics and power and design and build cities. Muslim city is a reflection of the relationship between humans and God, Allah, and relationship between human each other, and relationship between human and the surrounding natural environment. We know it is Hablum minallah and Hablum minannas. Muslim cities in Java distribute across in the northern coast of Java and in the hinterland area of Java because of the histories. And Muslim city in Java is facing the threat of globalization as well as the global warming. Seems like globalization and global warming have a major impact. It has relation one another on the resilience of Java Muslim city, which has a traditional character. Globalization in the social process that shows the mutual interaction between global potential, just like global market, travel, popular culture, and technology that threaten the locality of Javanese Muslim cities. And how strong the Muslim city can sustain and survive facing this disturbance. It will be the big question.
Yang kemarin kita bicarakan itu.
Now we discuss about Muslim city in Java. We discuss about history. The history of Muslim in Java indicate that the evidence show that Islam has entered to Java Islam cities since in the 11th century. At that time, Hinduism and Buddhism still has a strong power in the people's life. In Majapahit Empire is the latest and the biggest empire in Java, and the strong Hindu culture influence in the Majapahit Empire. And then Majapahit Empire collapsed by family war. It's happened in 1478 century, and then one thing that has a big influence to the collapse of Majapahit is because the attack from the Islamic Sultanate of Demak. So this is a map of Japanese Majapahit Empire, and this is map about the spread of Islam in Java, start from 11th to 16th century. And this is location of Demak Sultanate in the 16th century. Actually, located Demak is over here in central of Java. Then this is the configuration of Trowland city. This is this result of the reconstruction made by McLean Pond in 1924, based from the book of Negara Kertagama, and the reconstruction show about the configuration of Trowland cities that call Kuta, that settled inside the wall. Okay. And at that time, the culture of inhabitant has gained influence from the Hindu, Buddhist, as well as Islam civilization, since from the Majapahit in the latest period, and Demak city, and also Mataram Islam. And Kuta is city that located surrounded the wall inside the city. And with this illustration, show that the city that located inside the wall, and also there has a river as transportation facility at that time, and the people houses. Okay. And then after Majapahit collapse, we know about the history of Wali Songo. Wali Songo is known as a ninth saint or religious leader who dedicate their life to spread Islam in Java in 14th centuries to 15th centuries. Yeah, this is the illustration of Wali Songo, that actually their institution of Islamic spirit and start from Sunan Ampel with location in Surabaya, and then go to the west side. There are Sunan Bonang, Sunan Gresik, at Gresik, Sunan Kalijaga, at Demak, Sunan Kudus, Sunan Moria, and we can see that the Islam teaching spread in the northern of Java by the Wali Songo. Okay. Wali Songo actually is a Sufi who spread Islamic teaching through media of trading and acculturation. With this method, they spread Islam with conducive situation. So many people, especially from the lowest people, like to the new teaching of Islam. And then pesantren is known as the oldest education institution in Indonesia, start from 60th century by Sunan Ampel. After this pesantren from Sunan Ampel, so the method of pesantren to be an Islamic educational, a traditionally Islamic educational rise, emerged one by one, and then became a new educational institution to the people. And its socio-historical journey, pesantren contribute greatly to the formation of nation and state. Yeah. Because of the educational in pesantren, so make the many people to be smart, and then they have a chance to state their opinion, to be discuss about the nation and state, and so on. So pesantren has a significant contribution in the development of the country. Pesantren are also an important pillar in the history of educational in Indonesia. Right now, until nowadays, we can find pesantren in every city. Some pesantren located spread not only in rural area but also in cities area. So pesantren became religious institution for people to get good mentality in Islam. About the economic activity, since the early Demak developed because of its strategic location near the coastal area and near the river. So Demak then developed to be a maritime country supported by port activities, trading, and agriculture. Location of Demak Sultanate in the 4087 to 5046 is very strategic. So it make Demak develop faster, and then but not long because until less than 15 years, the Demak then collapsed because of the family war, and then the power moved to the southeast, and then known as Pajang. Pajang Sultanate. This is the location of Pajang Sultanate, and Pajang Sultanate established in 1548 to 1586, supported by agriculture based on agriculture, land, trading, and batik handcraft. Pajang was the embryo of Mataram Sultanate after Pajang defeated by Mataram. Yeah, not long, only about 20 years, and then defeated by Mataram. About the Mataram Sultanate, the city developed for trade, craft industry, and agriculture product, and the location is very strategic. The location of Mataram is located in the south of the Pajang. Yeah, so we call it in the hinterland of Java. Okay, and being on the road to the north connection with Pajang, the element of the city include the alun-alun or square, mosque, market, keraton or palace. Magarsari means residential for a worker, and then also noble houses. Okay. Then configuration of the Muslim city, just like in Malaysia that has described by Ms. Nurul. Yeah. In the various part of world known that Muslim cities is growing in its locality with distinctive character influenced by Islamic law. And just like what Rabah state, the design principle of Islamic city should be accommodate of natural law, religious and cultural belief, and Sharia law and Islam. Typical features generally appear in the Muslim city are the main mosque or great mosque, souks or market, citadel or palace, residential quarters, street network, wall, and some facilities located outside the main gate like cemetery, animal sucks garden, and so on. And this is the illustration of Kasbah Al-Jur that's stated by Rabah. And then what's the configuration in Javanese city, Muslim Javanese city? This picture shows that the location of the territory of the Sultanate that located in northern of Javanese city. And then this is the city that developed because of their strategic location, because near of the coastal and river. So this early Islamic city located in the northern side of Javanese. And this is the structure of the city of the map. This shows that this the map contain of some element of structural city. There was an alun-alun in the center of the city, and then sitting here is show the location of the palace, and then this is the Great Mosque in the north side of alun-alun. Then this is the market located little bit distant with the alun-alun, and this is the squatter, residential squatter, with a group in their ethnies. And okay, and in the hinterland location, the configuration of Muslim Japanese city shows like this illustration. Time by time, when after the map collapse and the city moved from Demak to the Pajang city, and then Pajang defeated by Mataram, then the city moved to Kota Gede, and then moved to Kartasura, and finally this is the Kartasura city. Yeah, the structural element of the Muslim city, we find that there are palace, alun-alun, great malls, noble dormitory, and residence for worker, as well as market. And this element could find in the capital city of this sultanate. Okay. And one thing important is this: the location of the facility is based on the based on the hierarchical of this circle of this mandala, the core Manchapat. The center is the most sacred and secret, and then go to forward is moved to the profane one. So the palace located in the center of the city show that it is the sacred one. And the important thing is the access north to south is the sacred access, and then the east from west is the profane one. Okay. And this is configuration about the Demak mosque, that actually this is show the core of the city. This is the location of the mosque, Great Mosque of Demak, and this is the plan of Great Mosque Demak, and behind the main building located the grave. The grave is a complex of grave as a symbol of appreciation to the Islamic religiosity, to the leaders who has contributed to the nation and state. So some of Sultan Demak and his family buried in this place. And then in Kota Gede, behind location of the main mosque, also located the grave for the leader of Mataram. And this is also in Menara Kudus, located in Kudus city. Behind the main building located the grave complex for the Sunan Kudus as a leader, religious leader in Kudus. Okay, then configuration in city in the hinterland of Java, in Demak city also influenced by the cosmology. So you can see that there is the north-south axis that represent the sacred one, and this is the alun-alun, and this is the palace. Okay. And to access combine between terrestrial energy working in the east and west as the symbol of birth lines. The process of human since the birth to the death, and the celestial energy working in the north and south axis, it symbol heavenly life. And the structural element of Kota Demak is called Mancapat, that includes 4 elements. There are square or alun-alun, Masjid Agung, palace, and market. This is the Kudus city, the city located in the west side of the river, just like Demak city also. And then this is the central city of the Kudus Kulon, and this is the north-south axis, and this is east-west axis. About the residential area in Kudus city, they're located around the masjid, a great mosque in masjid. So we can see that the form of the compact residential area that spread in this location with the narrow street inside the kampung. And then one thing important is the house. The house is facing to the south, to the main road. So every traditional building facing to the south. So because the south is the secret orientation that related to the fertile goddess. Yeah. This is the traditional Kudus houses that known as Joglo Pencu, that made from wood, high quality wood. And until now, today we can find this building, but time by time the number of building has decreased because of many people, or this is because of the heritage building, so a little bit different for the inheritance to maintain this building because need more expensive finance, yeah, and so on. But the important thing is this building fully of the carving wooden high quality, and this is a represent the acculturation that influence in the society of Kudus city, because the knowledge of the craft teach by religious leader from Chinese. So we can find many elements in these traditional houses. Is a form of acculturation between some culture, Chinese, Persian, European, and Java, and many others. And this.
Boti, would you like to speed up your presentations due to the time constraint here?
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Ms. Risa. Okay. And this form of roof that rise to the sky symbolize about the cosmology, and as well as and this plan show that this is the main building and this is the workplace. So the houses has mean not only to the place to living but also place to work and to maintain kinship and to a place to pray. This is a symbol of civilization in Kudus city. And then what about the living heritage? Many cities that spread in many Muslim cities that spread in northern coast Java as well as in hinterland of Java, show that the first is in the Ampel, Surabaya city, the location that Sunan Ampel spread Islam. So this is place that sites of Sunan Ampel, most in the center of Islamic spread in Surabaya, is open use for many worship activities until now a day, and pronunciation to create salat performed in the mosque. And early function is the center of spirit Islam teaching led by Sunan Ampel, and then recent function is a center spirit Islam teaching led by Sunan Ampel. Yeah, it has been almost 4 centuries. This site still exists, and then now it's become a religious tourism pilgrimage. And located around the mosque is the residential area surrounding the mosque, and the residents support this activity with to conduct their livelihood, and then it's become religious settlement. And this is the in Kudus, Muslim settlement in Kudus Kulon. This is the patron, and this is the Joglo Penju house. Okay, and nowadays the residential for Gusjigang community. Gusjigang community is the community of Kudus Kulon, which has a pioneer in a trader, but they're also good religious. And this is the sites of Sunan Kudus, and we can see the pilgrimage that time by time still came to pilgrim the Sunan Kudus. And this is also for Sunan Kalijaga sites, and nowadays became a religious pilgrimage tourism asset. Okay, and this most, okay, and the Surakarta city also, this is the Surakarta city plan that built since in the 18th centuries, and this Keraton Surakarta nowadays it's became one of the biggest and cities express strong local culture, and nowadays Surakarta became supported by business, trading, batik craft, and so on. From these cities show that they could sustain time by time, period by period, because the role of the living heritage that has a significant participation in the maintaining the building and take care about the building and environment, so it could be sustained until nowadays. And then toward yeah. toward sustainability and survivability of Muslim Java. Change is a natural thing, but the history and identity of the city should be cared for and preserved to be passed on to future generation. And the potential of living heritage that live together throughout the ages of the artifact has been a very important role in the care and preservation of urban cultural heritage. The living heritage is a potential as well as an approach that involves community participation to care for the appreciate both tangible and intangible heritage. The configuration of heritage city is full of meaning and it is rich of acculturation, contain of element that has a meaning, has a important meaning to the community. And then global warming and increasing concentration of greenhouse gases will disrupt Muslim cities that grow traditionally and really on natural resources, especially a heritage city, but by natural and non-natural disasters. The resilience of Java Muslim cities need to be encouraged to be able to face a disturbance caused by global warming by utilizing science and technology. Cities are encouraged to be more responsive to disaster mitigation by utilizing digital technology. And the Javanese Muslim city is encouraged to be able to manage energy use to make it more effective and efficient. This will have an effect on changing the lifestyle to modern direction and will change car of the city slowly from traditional to modern one. And this is the concept of sustainability and livability. These sites show that the socio-cultural that content of myth, political power, religion, ideology, kinship, and social cohesion. And these sites contains of the configuration that contain of landscape, cemetery, educational facility, palace, street, market, and the Christmas, of course. And this section contain of the economic activity that contain of agribusiness, trading, industry, and tourism. And then sustainability could get because of the collaboration between three of aspects, but it's need one thing to be survivability, that is science and technology, to be to make the city survival. Conclusion. The sustainability of Muslim city of Java, which is supported by socio-cultural life, by
Halo, Bu Ati. I guess Bu Ati has lost connection here. Hello?
No, she just unmute the microphone. Okay, I will.
Sorry, Bu Ati, could you repeat your conclusion?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Echa. And the management is needed for urban regeneration that involves all stakeholders, potential also social people, social culture, Japanese Muslim, like religion, ideology, kinship, and social cohesion. as well as the political power, and made it is very, very important to face changing. Thank you, Mr. Recha. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Bu Ati, for your interesting presentations about the sustainability concept. As I note here that you already present about sustainability concept, which can be seen through history and identity, and the potential of living heritage on reaching that concept. Maybe you can discuss these interesting points in the question and answer sessions after this session. And before that, I would like to invite the last speakers for these sessions, which will be presented by Professor Dr. Engineering Jun Kikata from Kagoshima University. Are you joining us?
Yes.
Really?
Hello.
Okay, I will. Okay, please. I will give this opportunity to your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to share my screen.
Yes, please.
Okay, so can you see?
Yes.
Okay.
Good, see clear.
So,
wait.
Okay. Okay. Hello. Good afternoon. Yes.
I see this slide. I see your slide in a half part. Maybe you can represent it.
All right.
You might to close it first, then maybe you can.
Okay.
No, not yet.
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Maybe you have to close it first.
Close. Okay. How can I close? Okay, I closed.
Okay, maybe you can reopen it.
Okay, I will reopen it.
Is there?
Okay. Okay, so
Yes.
Okay.
Well. Yes, please.
Okay. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jun Kikata from Department of Architecture, Kagoshima University, Japan. Today I'm going to talk about park system. It's a quite modern topic compared to previous presentation, but also particularly focus on the combination of land use, mainly to the park and others, and then also quite contemporary issues about the management or development scheme in the country like Japan. I mean, it's aged and somehow matured society now facing. So, okay, let's start. And then I will, okay. Excuse me, something wrong. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me show you the outline of my presentation. I talk about historical development of park system. It is originally idea designed in the US mainly, and then I explain how it introduced to the Japanese cities, and then I explain in this process how in this process I will point out the importance of the notion of combined land use between park and other use. And then I am going to introduce some typical issues, typical cases. And the second, I go on to a contemporary topic of a new management scheme for the parks introduced to the parks of Japanese cities. That is a private-public partnership kind of topic. And then I give you the background why the cities of Japan introducing such scheme, and introduce some recent or ongoing project in the cities. Then finally conclude with some points of issue. Okay, I introduce most well-known case or example of park system from the US. The city of Minneapolis is known as its park system, which has been called the best one in the United States. The park system's total area is 6,000 acres. It means 24 square kilometers. That is 15% of the total area of the city of Minneapolis. The park system consists of 7 lakes and Minnehaha Creek, also connected to the Mississippi River. The park system is maintained by a Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board that is created in 1883. Since then, the park system has been gradually developed, and by the 1920s, a circle of parks got to surround the city center. The development of the park system began with the preservation of waterfalls called Minnehaha Falls. The first president of the board, Charles Loring, convinced landowners to donate property on the Minnehaha Creek. That is the start point of the park system. Another part of the park system is composed by a parkway called Memorial Victory Parkway. The parkway was completed in 1921 and was dedicated as a memorial to servicemen and nurses from the neighborhood who died in World War I. Another park, Theodore Worth Park, is the largest park managed by the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. The origin of the park was back in 1889 with an initial acquisition of 66 acres and was eventually named for Theodore Worth, who was superintendent of Minneapolis Parks for 30 years from 1906 to 1936. The park consists of various facilities, amenities, and type of land use. There are 2 golf courses covered with turf that is planted and maintained artificially. And this is a clubhouse erected in the 1920s. Theodore Worth was a native of Switzerland, so he recommended the design, but came from Swiss Chalet. You see the style of architecture. This is an architecture heritage that represents the history of the park system. Another part of Theodore Worth Park is preserved as a wildflower garden and bird sanctuary, partly restored to the wild prairie, the original nature of the land of the United States. As we see, a large park system of Minneapolis presents various types of green space, from memorial to amusement facilities to the preserve, like this. Also, it is important to recognize that the maintenance scheme is regularly revised through a comprehensive assessment. a green space is not a simple element as a part of urban planning. Of course, it is a home of natural diversity, but also is a cultural heritage. I think I can convert the definition of cultural landscape proposed by UNESCO. It is the combined works of nature and man. Also, Minnesota park system are connected by the Mississippi River. And interestingly, the campus of the University of Minnesota consists a part of the riverfront park. So the campus is a part of park system, we can see. Okay, next I go on to the Japanese examples. Firstly, I introduce the case of city of Osaka. In the 1920s and 30s, advanced urban planning theory is attempted to introduce in the city of Osaka. Mayor Hajime Seki, a former professor, also an economist who had studied in Europe, was a proponent of this trial. He revitalized Osaka with a variety of innovative urban planning projects, such as subway line, Midosuji line, and so on. Also, he had a deep knowledge of green space planning. He discussed how the green space planning should be in a number of papers and articles. And he commented that it is necessary to maintain these open spaces in combination with other purposes. Or he introducing a German term, Nutzgrünflächen. It means usable green areas. And then also he recommends the combination use of the space. And then Osaka City enacted the Greater Osaka Ideal Green Space Plan, the plan you see in the right and the left side, in 1927. This reflects the Seki's concept very directly. This Osaka's great ideal green space plan is known to be the earliest and finest example of park system in Japan. The system consists of river parks, seaside parks, and large green spaces in the fringe of the city area. The site of these green spaces are old agricultural area, though most of them are proposed to be the area of the land readjustment projects. This plan counted such a kind of urban planning projects together. Also, though, the question is, how do they plan to get such large green spaces in such kind of redevelopment plan? Okay, I focus on this area. You see the arrow? Okay,
yes.
The south part of south end of the Osaka city area. There is another prime urban project propelled by Seki, Mayor Seki, along with the Midosuji subway line. That was the establishment of Osaka City University and development of its campus. The projected campus was located in the very south end of the city area, where I focused in the previous slide. You see that this is a riverside, and it's the area. Here, also a large-scale land readjustment project was proposed. You see the grid here. And the campus was planned to occupy some blocks in the area, like this. And interestingly, original plan of the campus site, you see in this drawing, reveals a close connection or unity between park system and the campus. This is the original campus site, but this is next to the parkway here, and also the Riverside Park here. So the plan intend to unify the campus to the parks. See, and finally today, a strip of riverfront park here on the campus of Osaka City University, especially the athletics field of the campus, compose a united green space. We can recognize that this is a legacy or heritage after the ideal green space plan led by Mayor Seki. In the Tokyo metropolitan area, another idealistic green space plan was proposed in 1939 in the beginning of the war years. This is a plan with the broadest list of elements and land use possibly considered as green spaces. They listed green spaces of combined use and also an equivalent of green spaces in the list. And here, again, suburban campuses are also included as the green spaces of combined use. For example, the campus of Tokyo Institute of Technology in Okayama area, or campus of Keio University of Hiyoshi are included to the green plan, green space plan. It is important to know, but I cannot explain in detail here, that most of these suburban campuses of Tokyo metropolitan area were developed by private initiative, even though the institutions are public, like national. For those cases of two campuses of Tokyo Institute of Technology and Keio University, a railway company, that is today's Tokyo company, was the engine of the development. They developed the area, residential, mainly the residential development they took, and then invited the campuses to the area, the development area. Here we can observe a historical and very interesting co-working or co-ride, or of course co-working, cooperation of public and private. And then this cooperation finally synthesized to the greater green space plan. The city of Nagoya also introduced a remarkable green space plan in the wartime. And importantly, it was realized almost as planned. In addition to the pre-war and wartime green space plan of Nagoya, post-war reconstruction plan gives outstanding green space in the very center of the city of Nagoya. The plan converted a line of urban blocks in the center to the green space. So here you see the huge green line in the center of the city of Nagoya. Looking back to the suburban green space of Nagoya, on the east hill of the city, so-called forest city was projected. And here again, the area accommodated large campuses. One is Nagoya University campus. A large linear green space, so-called green belt, runs in the center of the campus. And the auditorium, named Toyoda Memorial Hall, is located at the end. The hall was designed by architect Fumihiko Maki, quite well-known architect, Pritzker Award winner. And he gave transparency to the auditorium using a mega frame structure and slender columns. This design unifies the green belt and the preserved green space behind the auditorium. Here is going to be a green belt with line trees And then this is a preserved green area. And another architecture solution of the coexistence of green space and the campus was given by an American architect, Anthony Raymond, in the design of Nanzan University, another campus in the Nagoya. The central axis runs south and north along the ridgeway, and then the trees are preserved between the lines of buildings here, just like a finger, like this. So it is interesting to know that, of course, the concept of combined use of land use to the green space and, for example, campus is it is a kind of ideal notion, but it is realized by the actual architecture planning, like Maki did or Raymond did. So in this means the campuses of Nagoya is important cases. Actually, both of these campuses are now listed to the Docomomo heritage list. Okay, finally, I comment on my city, Kagoshima. The Kagoshima is a quite unique city, living with an active volcano in front of the city, close to the bay. And the city of Kagoshima also introduced a good and relatively early green space plan in Japan back in 1933. One of the remarkable features of this plan was the use of outer rim of the volcanic crater. Here, these are the part of the crater of that volcano. Also, another feature was the broad designation of memorial sites. Kagoshima is a home of Meiji restoration. So we have many important persons from Kagoshima contributed to the the renewal of the country. So there are many memorial sites. For example, this is statues of Takamori Saigo in front of castle area. And another one is General Togo. He is a hero of Japan Russo War. Such kind of memorial area is all designated to the park. And also along to the monument, historical sites, actual sites of old battlefield are designated and preserved and listed as a part of park system. Also, here is, this is Ishibashi Memorial Park. This is a conservation area of a stone bridge that was demolished by a typhoon or heavy rain almost 200 years ago. But part of the stone bridge was moved to the park, a new park, and also this consists park system of Kagoshima. Okay, I explained the history of the park system development, started from the United States to the Japanese cities. But here now in the 21st century, 2010, especially in the Japanese cities, new management scheme for the parks are introduced. Mainly because of the social change of Japanese society, decline of population, and then it's reflected to the decline, shortage of tax income of the local government. So primarily now the government tried to introduce a public initiative to the maintenance or development of the public parks. Recently, two law amendments was done in Japan. One is Urban Park Act of amendment that is amended in 2017. This introduces the broader introduction of PPP, public-private partnership, and PFI, private financial initiative projects. And another one is Act of Protection of Cultural Properties, amended in 2018. This makes the delegation of authority to the local governments, and also conceptual shift from conservation to utilization of the cultural properties. I think you might know the early example of a conversion of our urban brown field to the green field in the United States, like High Line in New York City, or recently a case, Beltline of Atlanta. These both are the former railways, high-rise railways, but convert to the green park area. And then also these projects are initiated by the private finances, literally saying it's a kind of capitalist type of project introduced to this kind of project. Now in Japan, especially in the large cities like Tokyo, many cases are emerging as a PPP PFI project of that of park redevelopment or park opening. This is a Minami Ikebukuro Park, opened in 2018 in Tokyo, next to the large Ikebukuro station. Originally, this was a site of water supply, but it's converted to the park in the surface, and the water facilities are now redeveloped in the underground space. So this is a public facility, but developed by a private, private finance. And then, okay, another one is Castle Park of Nagoya or in Kitakyushu. You see the castle inside in the center of these pictures, and then the park was originally kept as a historical site under the Cultural Property Protection Act, but now also these parks are opened to the public, more active public use, and then the facilities like cafe or souvenir shop are newly constructed by here also by the private finance. This is very recent examples. Nagoya's case is now just opened in this spring. And even in the Kitakyushu case, that was opened last year. Okay, I skip this. And there's many same type of public-private partnership-based projects, more onto the historical parks, like ancient ruins of settlements back in Yayoi period 2,000 years ago. This or more newer one back in feudal era of Sengoku era, back in 15th century. This is a case of Uji history park close to the city of Kyoto. There is a tomb of ancient emperor, and also here is arsenal back in 15th century. These historic ruins are also preserved or maintained as a part of historical park, but managed by a public initiative. So of course, I mean the public project, they have to earn money with tourism. So they provide some tourist destinies or tourist fascinations like museum or cafes or souvenir shops like this. So they built all of them and earn money with these facilities, and then management, even the historic assets. That is a new scheme now the Japanese government tried to introduce. There are many proposals. This one is at the Osaka area, Takatsuki City. This is also an ruins of ancient period residential area. There is ruins or remains of ancient houses or crop fields. But they also built a park center here, and then amusement park for children. And then they earn money here, and then preserve and maintenance these rest of historical parks. But this schemes has some kind of problems. This is a very recent case of the city of Nagoya in the center of the city. As I already mentioned, the center of the city of Nagoya has a very rich green space developed after the post-war reconstruction. And you see the picture before, there are many trees, a very rich green space here, but now after the same type of private PFI project, changed to a turf lawn park together with many shops and cafes. That is to earn the sufficient money to preserve this wide green space. So I think it's one can say that this is very attractive or let's say effective mean to revitalize the city center. But in one aspect, from one aspect, a huge loss of green is obvious. So this is a very controversial case of the introduction of private initiative. So this type of project are now introduced to the many cities, even in the local city like Kagoshima, where I live. This is a new park now developed in the former city hospital site. The hospital was moved to a larger space in the suburb. And then the site was converted to the new park. And then this park is also developed by a PFI project. And then the picture below shows the green track line of Kagoshima City tram. This is a nice case, but this is also part of active land use, a different land use of transportation. So I don't have a sheet, conclusion sheet, but I like to conclude my presentation with pointing of the issues, sorry, of this new management scheme now introduced in Japanese cities. It is good to revitalize the city, but sometimes it harms the original the value of the green space, for example, in Nagoya, or I don't know what happens actually after these projects in Kyoto or Osaka, but as you see, the historical sites represents the deep history of the site or land, and then this history reflected to the combined use or strong relationship between today's people's life and history. Yeah, I can say it consists the cultural landscape that UNESCO defines, the partner, the co-working or co-work of nature and human being. But that to introduce the private initiative, just you see too much intervention concerning the commercial effect can be asserted. So I think we should see carefully what happens in these cases, and as we see in the case of campuses, the design, architectural design or landscape design of these parks are more and more important in these cases in the new maintenance scheme. So that is my pointing out from Japanese cases. And then I'd like to I'd like to welcome your comments for these cases. Okay, I would like to finish my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Jun, for your presentations. So we are going through the Q&A sessions. So for the three presenters, I would like to invite all in these sessions. And from the chat message, I saw there are a lot of questions to be asked to Ms. Nurul here. But maybe we can only choose one of two from them to be explained to the participants here. So maybe I will choose from the first one, from Pak Agung Budi. Is there Bu Nurul here? So, yes.
I actually have answered the question in the chat.
Yeah, maybe you can explain some more about that one.
Okay.
So, yes. So he asked me about the current conditions in the phase of modernization, right? So which part have survived and which one is have changed about that? Maybe you can explain.
Okay, thank you very much for the question, Agung Budi. As mentioned earlier, there's a lot of traditional villages in Kuala Terengganu right now is going through the redevelopment process for new development. The waterfront area is now being redeveloped for waterfront development. So there's a lot of the villages has been destroyed, in fact, yeah. So that is what, and what has been survived is the villages which is a little bit outside of the city center. So most of the villages within the city center has been slowly been destroyed, which is very sad actually. And that's why we had to do the research quickly before everything is gone. Because the essence of the values of the Islamic essence can only be traced based on the previous footprint, yeah, previous settlement. With the current settlement, with the current new waterfront development, they have not considered this in the planning or the master planning, which is quite sad actually. Yeah.
Well, Pak Agung Budi, do you have any more further questions about that one?
Yeah, Mrs. Nurul, can you ask to me any element of the city that can survive until now? Just little bit space. There is the character of the traditional that can be survived until now.
Until now, okay. Based on the nucleus that I've mentioned earlier, the palace, the mosque, and the pasar is still there. But unfortunately, the residentials are gone. Within the traditional residential areas are gone, or almost gone. So, the existing main three main aspects is still there, but the palace now is only coming the visiting palace. The active palace is now outside the city. So you can see the soul of the city is already taken out from the city. So Terengganu is missing a big part of its sense of place. When they take out the palace to outside of the city center, and when they take out the residential or traditional villages. Yeah.
Okay, I think it's interesting about that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Okay, the next one, maybe it's related to Pak Agung Budi's questions about this culture, the special culture of people. The question is from Bu Sri Yuliani. It is from the Universitas 11 Maret. Maybe Bu Sri, do you want to ask the question by yourself? Sorry. Bu Sri Yuliani, are you here? Are you in the room? Oh, maybe you can explain about that, Bu Nurul. Maybe it's quite interesting about the questions. She's asking about the difference about the Terengganu and other places in Malaysia. So I'm also interested about that one.
Yeah. As for now, actually, I'm doing a research based on the study in Kuala Terengganu. Based on the urban design principles that I've gathered and found in Kuala Terengganu, I'm using that to evaluate the other cities in Malaysia, in Peninsular Malaysia. At the moment, I haven't finished the study yet, but I can hypothetically say that it has the same values or the same principles, but it has its own unique neighborhood character. So different state would have its own unique neighborhood character. But the Islamic principles, the urban design principles is there in most of the traditional cities.
So your hypothesis for now is almost all in the area in the Malaysia has the same Islamic values of the urban design principles.
Yeah, for those who has the influence of Islam in the state.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I will open the opportunity for the participants who want to speak or want to ask questions directly. Is there anyone, maybe anyone who can raise your hand here? for Bu Ati presentation, or maybe for Professor Jun presentation here? No. Okay. Well, due to the time constraint, maybe I will continue to the next session first. Bruno, thank you very much for your presentations, and thank you also for. Really? Oh, okay. There's one from Lodi, right? Okay, please.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Lodi Kalalo. I'm from Fakultas Teknik, Samratulangi University. I want to ask Professor Juno Kikata from Tagusima University. Hello, Professor.
Hi, thank you.
Actually, I'm a PhD student from Kumamoto University, Japan.
Ah, okay.
My supervisor
So you know quite well about Japanese cities.
Yes, yes.
That's good.
And my supervisor is Professor Kazuhisa Iki. And now
Iki
is
sensei. Right.
Professor Rinken Homa.
Mm-hmm.
My thesis project is about sustainable development, and especially sustainable tourism development.
Okay.
So my research is about some parks in Japan, especially in Kumamoto City. I really interested about your research, but I want to ask about I still want to know more about public partnership project. You said about public partnership project.
Public-private maybe, public-private and partnership, right?
Yeah, public-private partnership. Yeah,
I hear
it's
about
okay.
Partnership. So I want to ask if it about government and private company merging or something else. That's the first question. And the second is, how about they share funding in construction project? If the 50-50% or something else. And the suggestion is about if the park used as commercial purposes, how about the share of profit?
Okay.
All
right.
Percentage or something
okay.
else.
Could you give? Yeah. All right. Could you?
Sorry, Professor.
Excuse me. Could you say once again the first question? I
the
lost some
first
words.
The
first
question is, is it a government and private company partnership or something else?
Okay. I start from the first question.
Okay.
In my historical review, I mentioned partnership between private company and government. That is the case of Tokyo Institute of Technology or Nagoya University's campus, the national universities campuses. But of course, in this sense, the private is have two kind of privates. One is a company, a corporate entity, like a railroad company. For example, even in Kumamoto, the city of Kumamoto developed trams, and on the tramway, several companies like Mitsubishi erected some facilities, and then the company assisted the private the public sector like Kumamoto City to let's say develop the area around the tramway and such kind of things. Also another type of the private is the landowners. In the case of Nagoya, the contributors are not companies, but individual landowners who donated the land to the public sector, and then invited the national university to the area. So such kind of types are the earlier case of our partnership. But now, in the today's case, mainly the private sector is a kind of group of companies. It's a specific company for the private PFI project. That is consists of several companies like construction company, contractors, or retailers, or some others. And then the public sector is now mainly are the local governments, like Kagoshima City or Tokyo Metropolitan Government. So now government and the national government try to shift their initiative to the local government, but local government don't have the sufficient budget to manage all projects. So now all these cities try to introduce a new scheme. Is that okay? This is the first one, the answer for the first question. And the second one, the ratio is still small, and then there still be a strict regulation or limit that allowed to the private initiatives in the public site. So I cannot tell the correct number or figure, but what I know is only I remember that only 7% of the land was allowed to use. No, I'm sorry. It's just a building area. The Kemperis, the built-up area, is only allowed to 7% of the park, to the private sector. So what they can do is still limited, and then they get the benefit 100%, and then but also they have to manage the park, a part of the park, not the whole park, with the income they earned from the project. So I mean, the park is large, but still the act limits what the private sector can do in the sense of area, that the proportion of the area in the park. But in that area, the private sector can get the income of 100%. Is that right? Correct answer for your question? I think you can get more information through the website, or I can provide more if you need it.
You are still on mute, Mr. Lodi. You're still muted.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you very much for your explanation, Professor. Maybe we can continue this conversation by email.
Mm-hmm. Yes, welcome. Okay, I can provide somehow, in some way, my contact address to you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Arigatou.
Okay, thank you very much for the three speakers for these first sessions. Maybe we have to go next for the next sessions because the time is very limited today. So for the second sessions will be presented by two speakers. The first one is from Pak Budi Sudarwanto. He is lecturer from Architecture Department Universitas Diponegoro, and he teaches several courses. And his research related to locality and vernacular has been focused in recent years. And the second one is Professor Dr. Almantas Samalivicius, which is full professor from Vilnius Gediminas Technical University, and he teaches architecture criticism, aesthetic of architecture, and he was a visiting professor at Illinois University at Chicago and other universities. He also editor in the chief of Journal Architecture and Urbanism and Lithuanians Quarterly in Chicago, USA. So maybe I would like to invite Pak Budi Sudarwanto to prepare your presentations here. You have only 20 minutes for the presentation, Pak Budi.
Yeah.
Taking care of that. Okay.
Can I share my?
Yes, please.
Okay, I will deliver my paper, ladies and gentlemen. I will speak for 15 minutes to present it.
I'm sorry, Pak Budi, I didn't hear your voice clearly.
Oh.
May you near to the microphone or close to the...
Yes. I will speak for a few minutes to present the my paper. I will be delivering this paper about sharing space in the urban kampung Pustaman, one of the kampung in the city of Semarang. Pustaman is one kampung which had a complexity and uniqueness as a settlement in the city or center of Semarang. It is my local concept of doctorate degree in the literature that I has been construct. There is a knowledge concept of kampung. There are 6 criteria. The first is has the perspective of change. Kampung is has social construction, have a low quality of physical space, and also have a pressure to modernize, also have system of economic cost, and have informal culture. The urban kampung is as a local concept like Pustaman is located about 50 minutes from main public square is Simpang 5. It's near on the trade area like Bupaan, Pecinan. We can look at the map in the Semarang. In the east side, we found a bit of urban of Kampung Pustaman by Mataram in the side, and then core of the kampung is public toilet at first floor, and the second floor is for multi-purpose room is on blue cycle. Then expressive on the building is like this sketch. Taman can be accessed from 3 points from Mataram. and from Petungan by south side, and from Pekalongan by north side. Is the sequence of Bustaman in perspective view. We look at the picture, and then there are artifacts that Bustaman could be mentioned as urban kampung. The architecture building and the slaughterhouse and the alley of the kampung. The facade of Bustaman is like picture. This is about the sequence of Bustaman. There are artifacts at Bustaman could be mentioned as urban kampung on low living of 10 building, and then is Gedong 10, one of the Bustaman area that have complex landslide. There are some conditions less livable as a shared kitchen, just have single and functioning space compound. They have also strong social life and friendly nature and a good kinship. This is about the first of observation unit, because here I uses a qualitative research methods by 3 observation focus. The first observation is about the Gedong 10. We look at the picture is about the conditions. The second one is about a place for slaughtering goods. The place for slaughtering goods is the uniqueness of Bustaman. The place is smelly and dirty, and goods are placed near the slaughterhouse. The place is a driver of the local economy. There are that place. The place is Tony Place. The first place, Tony Place once, and the second ex-slaughterhouse of the Bustaman Kampung. The third place, Yusuf Place 1. This is the second observation of my research. So the third observation about the kampung Bustaman. Almost this area have a single residential type. Physical housing is more livable when compared to big Gedong 10 area. Even though they are close to each other, there are still residents can still do activity every day, even they are not spaced between each other. We can look at the activity. Like that is crowded of people in the. So I will tell about economic, social, culture in Bustaman by qualitative methods research. The first is local economic aspect of Bustaman. There is a complete process of making good gulai dishes, from goods to ready to eat, make gulai dishes. All activity here in the scheme, all in the Kampung Bustaman. How to existing process can be used in the illustration experience regarding the scheme of process economic activity. The role of women is bigger than men, which is referred to as a gender role. This almost women work here. And then here is place certain good that is drive local economic activity. And then cooking and selling by inhabitants is done in front of the house or taken up part of the alley. This is cooked in front of room and then stall as selling dishes. And the social aspect of Bustaman life, family relation and local economic activity still ties and settle in the Bustaman as a large family, although some are migrants in Bustaman. Bustaman is low quality with infrastructure, smell, and is not healthy. We can look at the picture illustration of occupancy of Bustaman, and then the activity space of the activity space shows the relationship between cultural space, social space, and economic space. And then we find a structure of space. In the core is cultural space, and the middle core is social space, and outer of space is about the economic activity. To internal by external. We found the type of the structural linkage of space by qualitative research method. This is several cultural can be looked at the picture. There is share a place to sell and to complement each other. Share a place to sell and complement by each other. Share space to live together within limitation. There are many limitations of space to use much of activity, and then the shared space is fulfilling daily in life habits. There is in the space limitation of space, they use the activity is mass activity. In local context, we call it like Japanese language, mangkat dengkul mulih mikul is the local concept as a social economic aspect. And then Tekgo and Pomah is about the social environmental aspect. And the third is Kiminanti, about the place as an economic aspect, economic and environmental aspect. It is local knowledge from the Bustaman as urban kampung. So sharing is a local knowledge about how they survive in the urban modernist process, the existing even to processed crop quality and environmental resource positively. We can draw the bubble diagram process is the sharing in the core, and then mangkat tenggol molecule is intention and in economic, and the other side is social. And then tenggol and coma, as I said before, ini nanti, and then the side is a concept or theory as asset finding or asset quantity. I think it's all I can quote. If there is any shortcoming, can ask. Thanks for our attention. Thank you, Mr. Desa. I finish my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Budi. Maybe we can go just go to the next speakers for the second sessions. The next one is from Almantas. Are you joining with us, Pak Almantas?
Yes, thank you.
Please go direct to present your presentations here.
Salam.
Thank you.
Let me see if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it. Yes, we can see it.
Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so my name is Almantas Amalavičius. I'm professor and chief research associate at Vilnius Gediminas Technical University. And you see the title of my paper. It's called Tradition, Heritage, and Problems of Sustainability. I will discuss certain issues related to tradition as well as heritage. And I will also provide a few examples. Actually, while preparing this paper, I have decided to focus on certain regions that are less familiar to this audience. So I chose actually some examples of traditional buildings from Europe, but quite different parts of Europe. And then finally, when I will so to say come to the end of this paper, I will discuss certain issues related to sustainability as far as tradition and heritage is concerned. Now, let me start with a statement that an interest in traditional and vernacular architecture, as well as to a certain degree traditional city making, has grown considerably during recent time. And the reasons for this, of course, are numerous, and it's not possible to discuss them all in detail, except just a few so to say remarks. Now, also there is a difference between the terms traditional architecture and vernacular architecture. However, I have decided, for the purposes of clarity, not to discuss them separately, and I will be when I will be using term traditional, it means that vernacular architecture is included in this category. Now, let me remind you that the interest in what we now call traditional building or traditional dwellings or settlements began actually quite late in human history. It happened in the 19th century. And this interest was largely triggered by the development of discipline of anthropology. As some of you might know, that anthropology came into the being right in the 19th century as a new academic discipline. And the results of this early anthropological interest in traditional or vernacular building are well represented and documented by the study of American scholar Morgan in his famous book, House and House Life of the American Aborigines. It was originally published at the end of 19th century and has been republished more lately. Now, the Western world became largely interested in traditional buildings quite late in the 20th century, actually in the 1960s. And in triggering this respect, we should refer to the American architect of Austrian descent. He was an architect and researcher, and his name was Bernard Rudowski. Rudowski organized a famous exhibition in New York and eventually published a book under the title of Architecture Without Architects. So the first edition of this book came in 1964. I have chosen a little extract from this book. And in this volume, Rudowski stated that architectural history, as written and taught in the Western world, has never been concerned with more than a few select cultures. In terms of space, it comprises only a small part of the globe, Europe, stretches of Egypt and Anatolia, a little more that was known in the 2nd century AD. So as you see, this was a quite strong but very accurate statement because until the second half of the last century, the Western mainstream architectural history was openly Europocentric, and actually it exalted Western or European architectural heritage as, so to say, the most important and valuable architectural legacy in the world. For a long time, traditional buildings, traditional setting of any other cultures were regarded either primitive or, to that matter, inferior to the accomplishments of Western architecture. And to illustrate this view, one can go to the very famous and influential history of architecture written by James Ferguson. Actually, this volume, this huge volume, dominated the Western and especially Anglo-Saxon understanding of architectural history for several decades after it was published in 1893. So now, coming back to the book, Architecture Without Architects, we find another statement by Bernard Rudowski. He noted that there is much to learn from architecture before it becomes an expert's art. The untutored builders in space and time, the protagonists of this show, demonstrate, actually he meant his exhibition, demonstrate an admirable talent for fitting their buildings into the natural surroundings. Instead of trying to conquer nature as we do, they became the vagaries of climate and challenge of topography. So, of course, we can note from the contemporary perspective that a lot of things changed since Rudowski published his famous book in the 60s. And proliferation of research into traditional as well as vernacular architecture during recent decades has provided an ample ground to question whether there was such a phenomena as architecture without architects. even if one chooses not to apply the title of architect as a kind of professional expert to any early builders, there is enough evidence to realize that building architectural structures and settlements is in one way or another related to professional or at least semi-professional activity. So at least male grown-up people with certain skills were historically involved in these activities. However, despite certain overcooked or exaggerated statements and certain inaccuracies, because Rudowski assembled a lot of material, a lot of examples from all over the globe, and of course, he was not a specialist in Oriental or Eastern cultures, or to that matter, African culture. So in any way, he can be still credited for pioneering in the studies of traditional architecture and ways of building that developed into an important branch of scholarly research in the history of architecture and urbanism since 1960s. Now, the later development in the field of traditional architecture studies were associated with the work of several other researchers. And there are books written by Amos Rapoport, who is the author of House Form and Culture, published in 1969, as well as Enrico Gudoni, author of Primitive Architecture, published in 1978, and Paul Oliver in his book Dwellings, the House Across the World. More lately, the work, not only the books, but also the activities of Professor Nazar Al-Sayed of California University at Berkeley, United States, ought to be mentioned in this context. Because first and foremost, he edited several important books discussing various issues related to traditional architecture and buildings, as well as their transformations in the contemporary world. You see, there are several titles on the screen. Actually, these are edited. These are 3 edited volumes involving a large group of researchers from United States as well as other countries, and more lately his own monograph titled "Traditions: the Real, the Hyper, and the Virtual," published six years ago in New York. So we should also add that these collective volumes were in fact the result of the activities of Nazar Al-Sayed in organizing extremely focused and extremely important series and conferences on traditions and architecture. Each of these conferences had a separate theme. They were inquiry into certain aspects of traditional architecture and generally, so to say, the changing context, changing global context, and as well as appropriation of new viewpoints, new theories to the study of traditional architecture. And during one of the first conferences of this type, the International Association for the Study of Traditional Environments came into being back in 1988. Of course, today we have much more international and regional organizations for the study of traditional architecture, traditional buildings. However, the Association for the Study of Traditional Environments still continues to attract architectural researchers interested in developing an understanding of traditional vernacular architecture, its building traditions, as well as city making in various parts of the globe. So now let me discuss another aspect. You see my subtitle, which is called Modernism and Tradition. So it is no secret to anybody that during the whole 20th century, the reigning ideology, architectural ideology and aesthetic ideology was modernism. And initially aspiring to a new and revolutionary way of imagining and reconstructing the human-built environment, in fact, modernism became a dominating, hegemonic ideology, and as such, it had disastrous effects on human environment, especially the cities and urban design. During the second half of the 20th century, modernism has actually created a global urban crisis, which is well documented and discussed. Of course, less agreement exists on modern movement in architecture and its cultural consequences. Nevertheless, to cut a long story short, it can be argued that among many other things, architectural modernism became a dominating language, ideology of architecture and its discourse, largely preventing other ways of understanding and constructing architecture to develop simultaneously. In fact, architectural modernism went as far as to wage a war on traditions and traditional building all over the globe. And the impact of modernism on architecture and urbanism was well summarized by renowned European architect, Leon Krier, who noted, let me now quote, a mere half century ago, modernist movement claimed to have developed definite solutions to all problems of the built environment. Today, one truth is evident. Without traditional landscapes, cities, and values, our environment would be a nightmare on a global scale. Modernism represents the negation of all that makes architecture useful. No roofs, no load-bearing walls, no columns, no arches, no vertical windows, no streets, no privacy, no grandeur, no decoration, no craftsman, no history, and no tradition. In fact, for several years now, neo-modernists have had to admit that there is no true substitute for the traditional fabric of streets and squares. Nevertheless, they continue to reject traditional architecture with the same obsolete arguments that yesterday completed them to reject traditional urbanism. Actually, this is the quotation from his famous book, The Architecture of Community, published a decade ago in United States. In this book, he also noted, let me give another quotation. In parallel, modernism produced its most horrific results when it reigned in absolute control. It was not by chance that it achieved its best results when building a minority position in architecture, as was the case in the 1920s. This could hopefully be the case in the future. In the generalized barbarity of the machine that colonizes cities and landscape, with mediocre dwellings and sheds, everyone is on the losing side. Today, the burning question is no longer who will win the war, but how to increase quality on all sides by establishing intelligent democratic competition, pluralist education, and non-partisan effective criticism. So in this sense, of course, traditional architecture becomes extremely important. Now, of course, the interest in traditional and vernacular building and settlements was recently revived by several factors. At least two reasons for current upsurge in traditional architecture and urbanism can be mentioned. So first, it is the growing importance of heritage and rising awareness of cultural and aesthetic importance of architectural and urban legacy. And secondly, it is requirements of sustainability and resilience that contributed to the expanding field of traditional studies. We should also add that Christopher Alexander has dedicated his efforts to prove that human civilization has developed a universal, a timeless language of architecture, or when he introduced a concept that he called equality with no name. So I hope that most of you know his seminal book, The Timeless Way of Building. Of course, his view is not shared by everybody, and it has also received certain criticism, but the work of Christopher Alexander is extremely important to understand the value of traditional architecture. Now, I would like to sustain from some more generalities, and I would now like to present a few examples of traditional architecture, as I have already mentioned. And these examples come from different regions. Now, here you see a couple of pictures. I took them some 6 or 7 years ago when I was staying in south of Italy, in the region of Bari. These are famous local historical vernacular or traditional buildings. They are called trullo in singular, or trulli when we refer to a number of these houses. And actually they are found in just southern part of Italy, in the city of Alberobello, as well as some other places close to it. Here in this picture, you can see how these buildings look like, and they are built of stone. They are traditional Apulian. Apulia is the region. Apulian dry stone huts with conical roofs. And these buildings are found in the region of Apulia, in the province of Bari, southern Italy. Now, the name originates from a Greek word that means a house whose space is covered by dry stone or keystone vault. And technically, it is important to note that while constructing such buildings, no mortar or cement was ever used. Now, these buildings originally were built by shepherds who needed to find shelter while they were taking care of animals, or while they were herding the animals. And researchers today claim that this tradition is at least 1,000 years old, generally in the whole Mediterranean region. Well, the evidence now is available that such buildings existed already in the 14th century, and the majority of the stock of these buildings that are still available today, they come from a later period, from the 19th century. And today, as much as 1,600 buildings remain. So trullo is a dwelling of circular or square form and has few openings. except a small aperture at the roof, at the top of the roof, for ventilation. Now, in the 20th century, these buildings were almost abandoned, and many of them, so to say, fell down. But today they are acknowledged an important part of Apulian architectural heritage, and came back to reuse because of the importance of cultural tourism. So at the moment, there is data that still 40% of these historical buildings remain abandoned. 30% are used for residential use, and the remaining percent are used for commercial purposes. Actually, some of them have been now used by tourists. Tourists can stay in these houses. Now, what is interesting and important that these buildings are known for their adaptability to the local climate. During winter, inside temperature is 10 degrees higher in comparison to outdoor temperature. Meanwhile, in summer, the temperature is always 10 degrees lower than the outside. So actually, they are pretty comfortable to use during so to say whole seasons. Now, the other example I would like to give in this lecture are the traditional Lithuanian rural dwellings. They are perhaps less impressive than the example of Apulian dwellings provided just earlier. However, they represent a culture that adapted to its own climatic conditions. Well, Lithuanian traditional dwelling houses, they were and continue to be built in wood, and they are quite moderate in size. And to the very day, they are continue to build in local materials of wood. Now, we must also note that the climate in Lithuania is very different from Italy. It is much colder in winter seasons, and local dwellings require heating all over the winter. And thus, Lithuanian rural houses, they were equipped with clay heaters, and originally wood was used to heat these houses during winter, when the temperature occasionally went down to 10 or 20 degrees below zero. Here in the picture, you can see a quite typical regional example of this building. It is the photo is taken in northern Lithuania. The only thing that originally the roofs were covered by hay. Actually, they used straw or hay to cover the roofs, but it is less practical because in the older times they were not heated, and chimneys were added later. So there is a possibility of fire taking over the building. So that's why now they use other material for building roof. This is also another example of contemporary traditional building. This type of building is more than 100 years old, and they can be found all over the country. Here you can see in this picture, you can see a quite typical contemporary country house, which is built of wood. This picture is taken in winter. So there are quite many of some of these buildings in the Lithuanian countryside. And this is also quite typical, but yet historical building. This one is about 150 years old. And more wealthy people built larger houses like this one. And unlike Truli, that have been recently used as a tourist attraction, Lithuanian rural houses continue to be built and used for primarily dwelling purposes, though some building elements, as I have already mentioned, roofs, have recently changed. Originally, most roofs were either built using hay or clay tiles. Yet currently people also prefer more modern, cheaper and durable synthetic materials, which of course changes, so to say, the authenticity of these houses. Now here you have examples of these historical buildings in the Curonian Lagoon. This is Lithuanian seaside. These houses are under protection. Nobody can make any adjustments without obtaining special permission from the heritage protection, governmental heritage protection agency. And they continue to be used as dwelling houses in that region. Now, let me, after providing you these two quite different examples, make a discussion about the relationship between traditional dwelling and sustainability. Well, discussion whether all traditional and vernacular architecture is sustainable is not new. Some researchers have provided arguments that not all traditional or vernacular buildings were and are sustainable in technical sense. Meanwhile, some have proved to be more sustainable than most contemporary architectural structures, built from synthetic materials and to the very day consuming large amounts of energy. Now, research was made concerning the dwellings of Truli, of the Apulian region, and it is proved that they are really sustainable and energy efficient. So available evidence suggests that first, humidity in Trullo is more regular than outdoor. B, it is respectively the temperatures and humidity is lower and higher in summer. Besides, the dwelling does not require any artificial mechanical cooling during summers, unlike modern houses in that particular climate. However, less evidence on sustainability issues are available on, say, Lithuanian traditional country houses, as they vary in size and type. And besides, some of them are historical and majority are contemporary structures that have been modernized. So it is not easy to assess them. And though many contemporary traditional houses copy structural and aesthetic qualities of traditional dwellings, most of them have been modernized and thus cannot be considered fully traditional in technical sense. They look like traditional buildings, but they are no longer traditional. So if we approach sustainability of traditional buildings in a broader context than simply things like energy efficiency and the like, then of course traditional buildings can be seen as related to geometry and aesthetics. And current research in neuroscience suggests that aesthetic experiences of such structures, rich in formal expression and ornamentation, is not superficially psychological aspect, but rather a kind of cognitive gateway, allowing us to experience and react to this deeper order of our environment. The artistic dimension lies in the way this gateway is shaped, and it is in resonance with other emotional experiences of life. So here I provided, so to say, to conclude the quotation from the book by American scholars, Mehafi and Salingaros. I work closely with Nikos Salingaros, and he's a close friend of mine. This leads us to understanding that traditional dwellings, and many of which make up traditional architectural heritage, should be assessed using multiple assessment perspective and criteria, rather than just one or few technical criteria, like, for example, energy consumption. Their structural, geometrical, aesthetic, as well as decorative qualities were shaped through centuries. And many of such traditional buildings can still provide various functions beyond tourist consumption, as the examples of Italian stone dwellings truly and traditional Lithuanian wooden country houses indicate. Last but not least, traditional buildings embody the wisdom of many generations as far as human living space, their aesthetics, and their relation to landscape is concerned.
Are you finished, Prof. Almantas?
Yes, I have finished. I am now trying to switch sharing. So just a moment.
Okay.
The moment I can't find. Yeah, now it should be over. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Almantas. It was really interesting presentations, and I guess it was also a good conclusion for this session. I mean, your presentation is really related to our theme today. Is about local wisdom and heritage of sustainability, towards sustainability. And maybe I will open the question and answer sessions for the participants who would like to ask directly to the both presenters and our speakers in the second sessions. Okay, there's one from Buati. Buati, would you like to ask by yourself directly?
Okay. Okay, that's nice presentation, Prof. Al. I'd like to convey a question regarding the effort of government or the public regarding to take care about the traditional architecture in the case in your country. Could you explain? Thank you.
Well, in Lithuania, of course, all the heritage buildings, they are, so to say, inscribed in the state registry. They are all registered, and they are under, so to say, control of the government agency. So if private persons or individuals or communities want to make, for example, some renovations, they need to provide, they need to receive approval from the government. And of course, then they consult architects specializing in heritage who help them, so to say, to reconstruct or simply to maintain these houses. So everywhere in Europe, actually, the heritage building now are under protection. And there are regional offices of government protectional agencies. So in Lithuania, we have four different, we are a small country, but we have four regions. We have regional offices, and they must apply to these regional offices for approval. The problem is that, of course, because of the reign of modernity and because the traditional houses were neglected for several decades, there is a problem with craftsmen who are specialized in constructing these buildings. So, for example, regarding these stray or hay roofs, there are only very few people now who have expertise in making them. So of course, if you ask them, it becomes pretty expensive to use their services because they are very few. They are, so to say, in much demand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Are there any supporting finance from the government or any other to maintain the tradition?
Not each and every house can use government allocations. Historically important buildings, they can receive funds from the government. But today, more funds are provided from European Union. Usually the owners, if they own historical or traditional historical houses, we have, of course, buildings larger that we call manor houses or castles. So they prepare projects for the experts of European Union, and European Union often provides very substantial amounts to maintain and so to say renovate these buildings and to change, so to say, their functions. Because the problem with larger buildings is that today you must change functions. Not all of them function as museums. Some of them become hotels. Some of them become some schools or conference centers or any other type of buildings.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, is there any other?
Can I ask some question?
Oh yes, of course, Mr. Jun. Yes, Prof. Jun, please.
Professor Amandas, thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. I have two questions or comments on your presentation. First one is about the tourist consumption you mentioned in the last phrase, and how is the the situation in Lithuania about the pressure of the tourism in Japan? Now it's a little bit seized by the COVID-19's infection, but in recent years, the tourist pressure is, how can I say, boomed with the strong promotion by the national government. So it's a big change, especially concerning about the preservation of traditional buildings. So nevertheless, we also lack the craftsmen who can deal the traditional structure properly. But some villages start inviting tourists, so they promote rehabilitation with very casual or rapid means. So I think it's a common problem among some other Asian countries like Korea, South Korea, or Taiwan, that are now distant via major tourist destinations from other country tourists. So I want to know how in the Lithuania and how you people treat this problem. And the second question is a much simpler one. I was very impressed by the image of the Lithuanian traditional dwelling with such roof. It's very closely resembled to Japanese folk house with such roof. But in Japan, I recognize the shape of the roof is very similar to the farmhouse where they do a sericulture in the roof story. Is it common or are you also doing sericulture in the folk house? Or if not, how is what is the purpose of the space in the roof of that kind of traditional dwelling?
Well, in the older times, people used it for. Usually, they were not living under the upper part of the roof, and they used it now for different purposes. For example, to put clothes or put some things.
So I mean, it's kind of storage.
Yeah, quite interestingly, you know, I think 12 or 14 years ago, I hosted a group of Japanese architects in Lithuania, where people like Fumihiko Maki, Tetsuo Furuichi, and
I think the important figures.
Yeah. 10 Japanese architects, and we brought them to traditional to see them traditional Lithuanian houses, and they were very much impressed and found a lot of parallels between Japanese way of building and joining the buildings and Lithuanian ones.
Yeah. I also recognize that very similar.
Now regarding your second question, you know, Lithuania, you know, we live in a climate that is rather cold in winter, so we resemble a little bit Korea. I was teaching in Korea for some time, you know. So in Korea they have very cold winters. We also have cold winters. So usually our tourism is mostly, so to say, happening in summer season. And besides, you see, people like to. We have a seaside, but our sea is cold. In summertime it never goes much up, 18 degrees above Celsius. And you know, in Bali or in other places, you can have very warm sea. So we are not flooded by tourism. The tourism is growing, but so far it is not threatening our heritage. And besides, you see, we have several tourist areas, but traditional buildings are available all over the country. So generally, there is another problem. It's maybe the bigger problem is not tourism at this moment, but the lack of local funds and the lack of expertise in actually maintaining these houses. You see, during Soviet occupation, traditional buildings, because it was a kind of modernist approach, they were not that considered very valuable or important. So we have a lot of collapsing buildings in many parts of the country.
Okay. I think the situation is also closer to our rural area. But now, as I introduced in my presentation, many local government tried to introduce a new means, a new scheme using private initiative, private funds. But of course, the source of their income or the energy is tourism. So I think now our country is at the threshold from the older situation to the new part, a new one. So I think it's nice for you to see what happens in our country, and then I would like to ask some advices how to how to sustain the historical traditional buildings out of the consumption of the tourism. Thank you very much. We keep in touch.
Yeah, it's really interesting discussion for this afternoon. Especially about the sustainable of the traditional architecture, especially about the one statement which represented by Prof. Almantas, which one say that traditional architecture can be have broader context of sustainability more than only energy, right? But it could be also geometry and others. And I think we have to see that from perspective. I mean, we cannot see the sustainability in one perspective, but we can see it from other perspective that can enrich that the meaning of the sustainability itself. And actually, there's still one question here. This is from Muhammad Hidayat. He asked, I guess this is for Prof. Almantas also. He asking about the if about the neo-vernacular architecture, which can impact for the fate of heritage. Which mean, is there any new concept of sustainability for the new vernacular architecture that if it does success become part of we have to lose building artifact. Is Muhammad Hidayat here? Maybe you can expand your questions more further. I didn't get his question directly.
Well, I can try to comment. You know, maybe we can see if it goes the right direction. Generally, I think it is very important that neo-vernacular kind of architecture comes into being, because during the 20th century, the global architecture was dominated by synthetic materials, by artificial cooling, artificial heating. And this interest in local traditions, I think it is very important, because there is a huge potential. Of course, I don't think that we can, so to say, rebuild our environment only using traditional means. But I think in some areas, especially in not so urbanized areas, these traditions can be used, can be wisely used, and we can see that in, for example, even in Turkey, where people are building quite good houses without any special expertise. In Ankara, in Istanbul, and according to the old laws, if they built with this house in 24 hours, they don't need a permission to build it. So here in Lithuania, of course, we don't have much kind of new vernacular buildings, because still this new building is dominated by a kind of modernist or postmodernist aesthetics and artificial materials. But in some European regions, this interest is really growing recently.
Yes, especially when you said that also traditional architecture and not always sustainable. I mean, there's some there's a chance that new architecture is more sustainable than traditional architecture. Yes. Okay, I think we all already reached our time this afternoon, and I will close this question and answer session for the second sessions, because we have to finish this today's sessions. So I will just want to conclude from the 5 speakers today, which is present 3 perspectives of the sustainability toward the traditional and heritage. And I agree with the last sentence from the Prof. Alamantas that not all we have to see the traditional architecture in broader context, more than only just an energy, and we can see also from geometry and others aspects. Okay, I guess I will give these sessions back to the MC, to Pak Edward, to close this session.
Okay, thank you, Pak Reza. I'm not the one who will close this session today, but the head of department will close our session. So, okay, I think first of all, I would like to thank to the speakers of the speakers today, Prof. Ikata, Prof. Almantas, Prof. Nurul, and Dr. Ati and Dr. Budi. and also for all the attendants. I saw that there are colleagues and students who joined this event today. I think the most far attendance is Adele, I think. Right now, you are in Libya, isn't it, Adele? You've grown your bird. Okay, and I also saw some colleagues from Universitas Samratulangi and some students from Batam Island and some colleagues from Solo. So I'm sorry I cannot mention you all one by one, but I would like to thanks to all of you for attending this event. I hope that what have been shared by the speakers and what have been discussed by us could bring new knowledge and new experience for us here today. So I would like to invite Dr. Agung Budi Sarjono as the head of Department of Architecture, Faculty of Engineering, Diponegoro University, to close today's session. Please, Pak Agung. Okay, I think Pak Agung is currently
Unmute the microphone.
He's next to. Okay.
Okay, thank you,
Pak
Pak Edu.
Okay, please.
Okay, Alhamdulillah, I says this event has gone well. Thanks to all the presenters for sharing their knowledge. Hopefully this is useful for all of us. Thank you also, ladies and gentlemen, the committee and all parties involved in this event. We close this session. Don't forget there is upcoming event that is no less interesting. Goodbye, to see you at the next event. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Pak Agung.
Thank you,
thank
Bu
you
Nurul.
for all
Thank
the attendance. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Bye.